This is a video in-service for the Arthrex Dualwave inflow and outflow pump. Here you'll find the power button. Simply press the button. You'll see it power on. It goes through its initialization process. As it does that, you can lift this black lever to raise the inflow door. Lift this lever will raise the outflow door. You have two sets of tubing, the AR6410 labeled arthroscopy main pump tubing, and you have the 6430, which is labeled arthroscopy outflow or Dualwave outflow tubing. Prior to connecting either the inflow or the outflow tube set, it is recommended, in fact highly recommended, to first connect your shaver handpiece to your shaver console with the console powered on. The reason for this is to establish a baseline of electroconductivity or communication between the pump and the shaver. Since the pump acknowledges when the shaver is turned on by way of electrical current, it's critical that you do this in this order. Another way you can do it is to connect everything and then simply turn the pump on and off if you weren't able to connect the shaver first. After having connected the shaver handpiece to the shaver console, select the proper joint on the display for the Dualwave pump. To the top left is a shoulder, there's a knee, an ankle, and a hip. Let's imagine we're doing a shoulder. So we would hit the shoulder. It would take you to your default pressure setting depending on the shoulder, on the joint selected. Of course, you can go up or down with the plus or minus per doctor preference. And then you'll connect the inflow tubing. This is the inflow tubing, or AR6410. There are indicators identifying which is to go off to the sterile or to the non-sterile field and which is to stay sterile. The orange portion with the clip holding the bag spikes as well as this pressure sensor will be thrown off. You simply pull the paper away, throw off the non-sterile portion to be connected. This orange clip opens up. You first want to pop this into this quick connect where the sensor light is red. Simply push, that locks it in. Then you take your green portion of your tubing. There are two tabs, a green and a clear. You'll take the green, put it on the left side. If you were to look there, there's a green icon. Put that there and simply roll it over the top, around the roller, and it's a pressure fit that sits right in there. You then want to make sure that this tube is on the middle of the rollers, one for proper flow of circulation, and also allows you to shut the door properly and not spike. Next, you'll want to close your bag spikes. Simply slide this orange clip off, remove the covers, spike your bags, and then simply release the clamps to allow for flow. That's it for the inflow portion. The right side of the pump controls your outflow. There's a separate tube, the AR6430 labeled Dualwave outflow cassette, that will be loaded on this side. It is a clear cassette that goes to the pump. Out of the sterile field and be thrown off are this clear cassette along with a tube that is labeled waste. All other tubes, including one labeled shaver, one labeled cannula, stay on the sterile field and are connected to the proper connection as labeled. The shaver to the shaver suction, the cannula to the cannula, and there you have it. I found that the best way is simply to push it into place, pull the tab up, roll the rollers until you're able to get it on. You will see then the the second arrow of 2 has been activated, identifying or indicating that it is properly installed. Just as with the inflow portion on the black rollers, you want to make sure that the tube is in the middle so as to not be spliced and to allow for proper circulation of fluid. shut the door, and shut the lever. You'll then, I'm not sure if you're able to hear that calibration, that's what you want to hear. So to know you've properly installed it, you'll hear that calibration and you'll see the two arrows. If neither one or only one happens, I would reseat and simply press the cassette, make sure and not being pinched. And at that point, once it is installed properly, you will see both the arrows as well as hear that calibration taking place. Now again, it's critical that the baseline be established with the shaver handpiece along with the pump in order to allow for communication. Since this pump acknowledges when the shaver is turned on and therefore accounts for that extra suction and distension loss by way of boosting the pressure at the time that the shaver's on, it's really important for it to function properly that you get off to a good start. The reality, as I know and you know, of the situation is you don't always have a chance to first plug in the shaver and then the tubing. Typically everything's thrown off at once. So the best method, I believe, is to connect everything by way of boosting the pressure at the time that the shaver's on. It's really important for it to function properly that you get off to a good start. The reality, as I know and you know, of the situation is you don't always have a chance to first plug in the shaver and then the tubing. Typically everything's thrown off at once. So the best method, I believe, is to connect everything and then simply just turn the pump off and back on, allow it to go through its initialization period, select the proper joint, and then you're good to go. As far as priming of the pump, you simply hit run and allow for all the bubbles to go out of the line onto the sterile field, and once all bubbles are out, you're good to go. At this point, having been spiked, you just hit run and that's it. As a recap, first connect your inflow portion with this sensor. To release it, by the way, you simply press this quick release. That there, green under, pull around, make sure it's in the middle of the black rollers, shut the door, push the lever down on the outflow portion, push in the cassette, pull it over the rollers, make sure it's in the middle, shut that, shut the latch, and you're good to go. Power the pump on and off to make sure you've established a good baseline of electrical current, and you're fine. On the surgical side or sterile field, to make sure it works properly, just make sure the proper tubes are connected to the proper place. In other words, the shaver line, I don't know if you can read that, needs to go to shaver. Or tubes are connected to the proper place. In other words, the shaver line, I don't know if you can read that, needs to go to shaver. The cannula line needs to go to either the outflow on your scope sheath or ideally a separate portal with an outflow cannula. And your waistline needs to go out of the sterile field and needs to be placed either into a kick bucket, or it can go into a Neptune with the suction turned way down, as suction on this waistline is not a feature, in fact can be detrimental if the suction is too high. That's all. If you have any questions, call your local Arthrex representative. Thank you.